Hey folks, I'm Dane Harden with Western Masters Martial Arts. We're a school here in Abingdon, Virginia, which is Southwest Virginia, and we offer a sword class wherein we teach the samurai sword. Our system is based off of Shihan Dana Abbott's swording system. Shihan Abbott, certainly you can look him up on the internet, you can Google him, you can find him on YouTube. So we're going to talk tonight about one of the three aspects of swording. We teach iai, which is a single cut kind of kata fashion skills where we focus on toyama ryu kata as well as the seite kata. We also teach some of the chanbara, which is Japanese for swashbuckling. It just means to kind of have some fun with padded swords. It would be like kendo light. So those are two aspects of our sword program. The third aspect, and the more serious aspect, is our concept with our tamashigeri, which is cutting. So this evening I have one of my students. He's a Shodan black belt, Bear, who has been, Bear Armstrong. Bear's been training with me for 7 or 8 years now in the sword. He's more of our senior students. Got a lot of gray hair on his head, just like I do, so Bear's been around quite a bit. And it's a lot of fun to get in here and practice our cutting. So we're going to be working with sword. So if you're not familiar with sword, some of the sword anatomy, the string itself or the cordage, we call this the sageo, right? The sageo, and the sageo goes through a little gate that's called the kurigata. And then we have the saya, which we might refer to as a sheath. The guard is the suba. The furniture on the weapon is called suka. And then of course if we draw the weapon, now this is a sharp blade, so we always are very cautious here as far as weapons control. I spent 35 years in the military, and we always make sure that our students are a good 10 to 15 feet away and off to the side of any cutting stations, and we make sure that we practice that safety at all times when we're using live blades in the dojo. But as you can see, the sword itself is a beautiful blade. The ha is this cutting edge. Sometimes you can see along the cutting edge what's called a heimon, which is a watermark. The blade itself, the tip is the kisaki, and typically we're cutting with this last 1/3 of the blade. The monouchi is really about the length of maybe what you might see in an average butcher knife. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and resheath my blade. Bear's going to use his own blade. I like to hold the sword still, and I bring the saya over the blade itself. Once I've secured that, I'll tie this off with my sageo so that I know that it's safe and it's not going to fall out. Okay. And now that that weapon is safe, I'm just going to go ahead and rebelt. So next up is going to be Bear. What Bear is going to be demonstrating is just a single cut. So with a single cut, I'm going to have Chris come on up. So Chris, if you would.
Hi.
So we have the straw mat. So the rice mat is a tatami mat. And the way that we prepare these, you'll buy these dry. And typically you have to soak them in a bathtub overnight. They'll probably triple or quadruple in their weight. Now this is a single tatami mat. It is the equivalency of cutting through a human arm. All right, so that's the concept of this. If you have a double mat, that's considered a leg. A triple mat would be a torso or an upper body. So we're going to spike this. So we have this wooden spike or stake which goes into the center of the tatami mat. And then of course we have our cutting station. So go ahead and tap that in there, Chris.
Right.
Chris is one of our white belts. He's also just recently out of the Marine Corps. So we get a lot of service guys in here, and we certainly appreciate your service, buddy. So he taps it down. He makes sure that we have a good solid plant. This is nice and safe. It's straight up and down. You have 1, 2, 3 cordage areas that you could use as markers when you're doing your cut. And from this point forward, Bear's basically going to be in charge. I just want to show one other thing, which will be after we've done the cutting, we always, thank you, Chris, go ahead and have a seat. We always go ahead and clean our weapon. So just like with your weapons at home, your M16 or whatever it is you're shooting, your 9mm, your pistols, you're going to oil them up. So having a good cleaning kit is really important as well. You'll need to know where the makugiano and the makugi, which are the wooden pegs, you usually get a little hammer that you tap those out with. You've got a powder ball in here that you can put chalk on in order to powder your blade. And usually you'll have some clove oil or something along that line that you can oil the blade with. All of these things are really important. If you're going to invest, well, I would say average bear, $500, $600 for a sword. If you're going to invest that much in a good cutting sword, you want to make sure that you maintain it. Now, and when I say $500 or $600, guys, you can go as high as you want in swords. It's kind of like cars. You can go buy an ancient samurai blade that's going to cost you, sky's the limit, $1 million. Or you can just use, these are Hanwei blades. I have an Abbott blade that you can get through Century Martial Arts. If you haven't gone to Century Martial Arts, in their link, there's a whole Dana Abbott series, the Dana Abbott blades. All of the things that you would need for sorting there, the hakama, the uniforms, tops. Also Dana on his samuraisports.com website, you can get Dana's books. He's very open to teaching folks as far as establishing new dojos so that we can keep sorting alive in this country and keep it going. So next we're going to do a demonstration of some tamashigeri. Bear-san, you're up. So you'll notice as Bear's approaching, he has the blade shouldered. He has it pointing straight up and down. He has the cutting edge facing away from him. He's in just a classic posture. And then I'm going to have Bear basically explain to you what it is that he's doing. Bear's one of my senior gentlemen. I like having him around because he's a little older than I am. It makes me feel young. So Bear, you're in charge. Thanks for doing this with us tonight.
You're welcome.
Onegashimasu.
Konnichiwa.
Hi, dozo.
You'd set up for a cut to the mat. You need to establish your distance. Remember, we're only using the first third of the blade. We don't want to cut here on the blade. We don't want to cut here. We want to cut on the last third of the blade. I don't know how it picks up on the camera.
It will.
All right. So, you set up. Cut. All right. Step back. See if it feels right. See if it's got it. All right. And then you do your cut. Hey. Yeah. Go.
Very good, Bear. And swords away. All right, so that's some basic cutting. Bear did what's called a kesa-Geri cut. It follows the line of the dogi. This is called the kesa. And what's interesting about this is if we're talking about anatomy, the kesa crisscrosses and it goes through the great vessels, the aorta, the heart, cuts through the main carotids in the neck. So the kesa cut, this 45-degree cut, was the classic cut. You can get into cutting competitions where we're doing various types of cuts, monchoku-geri, shinchoku-geri, gyaku kesa-Geri, kesa-Geri. All these are different angled cuts where we may cut this way, turn the blade over, cut this way, turn the blade straight, cut horizontal, turn the blade over, cut the opposite direction, cut up. Upward cuts tend to be much harder than downward cuts because gravity tends to work with you on this. And it's interesting because, you know, we also teach Aikido and we teach kickboxing and we teach Taekwondo and I teach military combatives. All of these things that relate to the sword relate to the efficiency of stroke and the efficiency of movement and the way that we cut. We say shibori, the way that we actually grip the sword, has a huge impact on how well you wind up with finishing up with the cutting station. In competitions, they're going to look to see if they're a nice 45-degree angle. If I turn this one, we can see that's a pretty sharp angle. So they would probably give Bear a C, maybe on that, C minus, because of the deep angle of the cut, but he's still passing. The first cut that he did was really a very good 45, nice and clean. This cut left some little straw hangers here. If Shihan Abbott were here, he'd probably be slapping Bear about the head and shoulders, but that's just what that guy does. So anyway, guys, that's your lesson this evening on some basics of sorting and tamashigeri. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank my uke, Bear, who came out here and helped us cut, and I want to thank all my students who set up and were watching the cutting demonstration. Thank you very much. Onegaishimasu. If you want to find out more about Western Masters Martial Arts, go to westernmasters.net or Dane Harden Martial Arts on YouTube. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye-bye.